Podcast, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 ticks that probably just gave you Lyme disease, right? But like the good kind, I hope. I'm your co-host, Davy, and with me, I have my healthy as he's ever been co-host, Brian. How are you, Brian?
What's up? Doing well.
Yeah. We are coming to you for context on the 16th of December. We are in our cool down period post release surge and worlds, just getting back in the rhythm of things, and decided that I'd like to take an episode to just, instead of for a little bit, we've kind of had our content dictated to us a little bit by, here's what's coming out, here's what the new stuff is. And then I was like, it'd be a great time to just, hey, what have I been really interested in, and see if that lines up. And in this case, it was Grandfather's Gardeners. So we're going to do an episode. We gave you our hot take on it. Now this is going to be the measured, hey, we've had some time with it. Here's what we've learned. Here's what we were right about. Here's what we were wrong about. Or here's what we didn't even think about. So that's what we're going to be covering. Brian, before we get there, I'm going to hit some community shout outs real quick. Do you remember Michael from Austria at Worlds?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So as most folks know, he's got a blog called Staggerers. And I don't believe we mentioned this last episode. He has an article that covers his choice to bring Cyrenized razors to Worlds. And we actually got to put him on stream playing against Mark from Path to Glory. And it's another one of those war scrolls I looked at. I was like, well, I don't know that anyone's ever going to be taking these guys. And then watched Michael play him, like, wow, he's either they're better than I thought, or he's really good, or both, or I don't know. Like it was cool to see him flex that warband and that war scroll. So rather than me kind of tell you about it, you should go read him telling you about it over on the Staggerers blog.
Yeah, 2 for 2 at Worlds is a single Cyreni player. First G, then Michael, so he's in a good group there.
Maybe it's like a Highlander thing, they'll be like every year,
Yeah.
But so that's cool. And as a side note, I had remembered that I wanted to talk about something, and I couldn't quite remember what. Honestly, a great resource for this exact thing that we're doing here, community shoutouts, is on Spent Glory. He fished as a monthly, like a web roundup sort of thing. Like here's content that was interesting, and it covers like blogs and cool paint jobs, and it'll even hit Reddit posts and podcasts and YouTube videos. And honestly, there's several times where I've kind of been scrolling through that and been like, oh, I did not know about that outlet, or I didn't know that outlet was still putting stuff out. So that's a great place to go if you want a little bit more. So, Brian, anything else we should mention for the community?
This just in, we're getting the Adepticon preview today. I think I just got an email notification that they're working out the fine details, and then it should be up later today. So if you're listening to this, it's already up, or should be already up. And looking at the events, we already have our event. It's going to be on Thursday, March 27th at Adepticon, and that's going to be 9:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. And we're doing a Underworld's narrative event. We're going to be trying to put our own spin on Underworlds. This is not the Grand Clash event. This is not the Golden Ticket event. We're just trying to offer something to get more people into the game and introduce with the game. If you're there purely for Underworlds, if you're at Adepticon purely for Underworlds, come and join us. Here we are. We're going to be doing our thing and make it fun. On the Friday,
and we'll have it like narratively tied in with the other Mortal Realms events happening.
Yeah, we're still fresh into second edition, so we're still figuring out exactly what that's going to look like. Plus, collaborating with the Mortal Realms, so we'll have more details to come, I'm sure. There's 32 spots available on Friday, March 28th. GW is hosting a Warhammer Underworld's Pods event. Looks like it's going to be kind of a casual tournament. It's not part of the Grand Clash. This is not like a 3-day event thing. It just looks like they're going to split the player groups into pods and have mini tournaments. So I think it's an excellent way to casually jump into an event that's not going to be hyper competitive with only, there can be only one podium dominance.
Yeah, so do that so you can dabble if you want to use it as a warm up for the full clash, or if you are doing other things but wanted to make sure you got some underworlds in while you were there.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea by GW. And that's on the Friday. And it says that they have spots for 128. That'd be awesome.
That'd be wild.
Yeah. And then on the Saturday and Sunday, so March 29th and March 30th, is going to be the Grand Clash, another 2-day event like we've seen before. That is going to be the golden ticket event to go get your qualification for Worlds.
Rad. All right. Hopefully we get to see you there.
Yeah.
Brian, what do you say we just jump right into it here?
Yep. And just get covered in ticks.
So folks know that we covered this warband the once. Brian, have you I've been playing this has been kind of the warband I've been focusing on since Worlds wrapped, and been enjoying them. Have you what's been your experience with the Gardeners? Just dabbling among other things, or focusing, or what would you say?
Well, typically when I try and do some gardening, the plants usually die. So I think these guys might be more of my style of gardening. I've done a few games as them and then against them, and not really know what we're doing. We're kind of stumbling around in second edition initially. I was playing Rivals mainly just to get a feel for the decks as well. So, and initially trying to figure them out, also trying to figure out the other warbands, but they've really stuck in my craw about like how intricately they mesh the fighters and the war scrolls. And that's just something I've continued to find captivating and something I haven't found another warband to do. So while I've been practicing with a bunch of old favorites, Zarbags, Dread Pageant, mostly Chaos, and trying to see what some of the other warbands have to offer, I'm still super drawn to just dinosaurs, but the Jaws are going to be everywhere. I saw at our local on Thursday, there was like 4 Jaws players, and really? I wanted to be among them, but our locals got to the boxes before I could.
I still don't have mine.
I know. And so I really, 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 really want to play them because just like everyone else, I think, that grew up with Jurassic Park, I have a dinosaur nostalgia. And so, but more interestingly, mechanically, I think, like, while Jaws have that style and everybody's prefers that, and a lot of people will say the Nurgle models don't really inspire me. I think their mechanics really inspire me, and honestly I keep feeling like, yeah, these are the guys that I should go with, because they have 5 fighters. The beast keyword isn't a thing anymore, so even the fly can hold. So I'm like, what's preventing me from doing the hold objective nostalgia that I've been doing with Gits and Dread Pageant, that I could just do that with Nurgle as well. Yeah. And they're tanky. So yeah, I really should be focusing on them more, and I think I will be. Yeah. So that's where I've been at. And then I've been tossing around some deck ideas. Like I said, I've practiced several different decks with them, but mainly Rivals. And then I'm like, okay, so how am I going to Nemesis build for them? And then the ideas just really go rampant, because like Emberstone Sentinels and holding with them, being tanky. Oh, am I getting ahead of ourselves?
Yeah, I think so. Let's for folks who may have been away from these for a bit, we are going to talk about kind of the decks that we've been trying out, and talk about some of our experience with those, and then maybe a little conjecture on some stuff that we haven't tried yet that we think might be cool. But I'm with you. I've heard a lot of people like, I just can't get past the models, which I totally get. I really like them. Do you have a favorite of these? We probably already asked this in our last one.
I really like, even though he's the most disgusting one, I like the one with the giant tick on his back. Yeah. So with Nurgle, I haven't actually painted any demons. I've painted plenty of Death Guard. Okay. But I haven't painted any Nurgle demons, Plague Bearers and the like. And one of the things is like, I totally get the vibe and the color coding, and like when you have armies on the table and how that uh, reads better if you have like a cohesive color across the table. So you have green faction versus X faction. But the green Nurgle doesn't really do it for me. Instead, I always go for more actual decay, IRL. Like in our line of work, we see some stuff, and nobody's neon green that I've come across. And
I don't give it a greenie yet.
Yeah, so with my Death Guard, I tend to lean into more of the biological grossness.
Nice.
So unfortunately for our locals, they may be subject to some of that.
I've got some ideas, but I'm so slow at painting that I don't want to tip my hand just yet. I'd like to try it out, but
I told Jazz that unfortunately, because she thinks some of the Nurgling stuff is cute. Like she's like, oh, I just I choose to see the ticks as cute, and I'm just like, well, unfortunately, like if I do get to painting these, I want the ticks to actually look like that semi-translucent blister where you can see the fluid in it. And she's like, Brian, stop talking.
You're ruining it.
Yeah.
I think my favorite continues to be Maggoty Stroog.
The pitchfork guy.
Yeah, so gleefully, he's like sowing seeds, but they're maggots.
Right.
Gnarly. And I find him to be like a pretty important fighter in the warband too. So I'm always secretly rooting for Stroog. But I think we kind of covered we did broad strokes on the fighter cards, and then went blow by blow on the war scroll. I think I remember thinking at first glance the war scroll, I'm like, there's not, you see other war scrolls where use this ability once per round or use this ability once per game, and you got 3 or 4 of those. Think about I don't know, like Emberwatch that have an end around that they can use 3 times and then 3 once per games. Like there's these different decision points for them. You look at the Gardener's War Scroll, and on the surface there are no decision points. There is there's my cycle, which determines my damage, gives me a heal at a certain point, and then imperturbable, no more than 2 damage can be inflicted on, and uninspired friendly fighter. It does say on uninspired friendly fighters in the same turn. I have to. There was some confusion about whether that's across all your uninspired fighters, which is strictly how it reads. But I'm guessing seems it's already really strong to be busted if it was.
I understand the wording and but I've never seen, nor do I think they would make a warband that comes with a across the uninspired warband force field like that. That is not on brand or narratively. That doesn't make sense. If you had a warband that had a caster that had some sort of a bubble aura, you could see then okay, but no, these are Nurgle demons. Each individual one takes more effort than you would expect to kill.
Sure. Yeah. I just, it would be nice if the wording was that little bit tighter there, but
I just don't think that people should play that way, because I don't think that's how it will be upheld going forward.
I agree.
With rules updates.
But overall, I did find myself making a fair amount of decisions, and it almost always hinges around manipulating that cycle, or it's that I don't even have enough time to think about other, all that much other than trying to map out where I'm going to be when on the cycle.
Because what you were saying is on the War Scroll, there's they don't essentially have any ploy abilities. It's all passives.
Yep. And so I would find myself I want to make, there's a good attack I want to make, but right now, and maybe in the next turn, I'm going to be at a 1 or I want to, I'm happy to make it a 2. I'd love to make it at a damage 3 attack. How can I set up to make that threatening, or make it threatening for multiple turns in a row where they're not sure when I'm going to make that jump or anything like that. And that really kind of gets in the opponent's head. But I will say, on my first impression, I really thought a lot of the warband was going to be about exactly what I was just talking about here, which is trying to get yourself to land on that damage 3, or at least be on the damage 2, avoiding the damage 1. And I haven't spent nearly as much time on that with what I've done. I've been whipping through the cycle real fast to get more heals and leaning
Hmm.
into the
Yeah.
what has been incredible is imperturbable.
Yeah.
Saying like if I have, say it's a uninspired, undamaged one of the plague bears, so Strug, Dripterus, or Slunge, then or even Flemus. What that says at this at a given turn, like this fighter will survive this turn. Like they may be able to find a way to like ping him next turn or ping him on my turn and then finish. Like there's ways around it, but it requires careful application of resources. And if you can swing a heal around at the right time, then you can negate a lot of that work. And just that guarantee of like this fighter will be alive through this turn is pretty incredible. And so you're looking for ways to leverage that. And then once you start adding wounds or heals, I think I've had one where Flemus, I got great fortitude on him, and he's at 5 wounds. He's still uninspired. He spends most of my games uninspired, but it's saying, hey, he's at 5 wounds. It's going to take you 3 turns to kill him, and that's and some of those attacks might miss. So good luck.
Hmm.
So imperturbable MVP on the card, but it all kind of works together because without some kind of threat of counterpunch, then you'd be punching bags that would take a while to drop, but you would eventually drop. So for me, the kind of the biggest surprise has been like just how great imperturbable is and how little I am actually attempting to inspire them. Like I've been seeing inspire as a, hey, cool, it happened. Let me see what I can do with this. Or sometimes I'm like, gosh, I wish I didn't inspire. Now I can take more than 2 damage in a turn.
Hmm.
Um, is there any? Has it been kind of on track with what you were thinking, or any unexpected developments for you?
Yeah, I was definitely like trying to optimize landing on the 3 damage just because that output.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing is the heal, like just cycling around that cycle as quick as possible and just using the threat of the 3 and like trying to manipulate my opponent. And this is maybe me thinking I'm too big brain or, but like, hovering it or when it's landing on something, reminding my opponent, yeah, when you cause the damage to me, I'll be switching over to 3 going into my activation. So
Yeah,
then they're like, do I, avoid attacking him right now?
yeah.
Uh,
I
yeah.
I I got a game in with Gerard the professor,
Hmm.
and I think he had not played against them yet, if I'm remembering right. And he there's so many times where he'd be like, okay, so I'm gonna get ready to make this charge. He's like, oh my god, because he'd all of a sudden realize like, oh, you healed, or like,
Hmm.
oh, like I wasn't doing the math on that heal, or oh, if I land this attack, you're jumping to
Right.
3 damage. And so I'm like, yeah, it's great for me either way. Either you miss it, and I'm happy because I have one more turn. Like every miss that they make is like, well, that's you're still 2 away now from killing me.
Yep.
Um, or if you hit, well, then the counterpunch is going to be pretty
Yeah, if
nasty.
you thought it was challenging when you made an attack and you're like, and they're dead, and your opponent's like, nope, they have great fortitude, you're like, no, like that kind of trying to track health pools and whether or not somebody's in kill shot range, like,
Yeah,
is like multiplied times 3, I think, because there's 3 to 4 different factors
yeah,
on this warband alone. And then if you bring great fortitude and healing potion, then it just gets nuts. And
yeah,
that's my plan.
yeah. Um, we
I
you
also want to say, for damage purposes, don't sleep on the fly.
oh
He's
yeah,
secretly one of the hardest hitters and consistently. Because 2 hammers, like he's the only one that doesn't have the gardener
rune mark.
rune mark,
Yep.
exactly. And so he doesn't fluctuate based on the cycle. So he hits for it's range 1, 2 hammers, 1 damage with crit grievous. But if you manage to inspire him, which isn't easy,
Yeah.
can be a challenge, then he's hitting 3 swords for 2 damage with crit grievous. That's pretty crazy, like
Yeah.
in terms of just pocket. And he moves 4, so like, and he's 2 dodge always. If you can bring some way to ping him, or if your opponent gives you a choice like pinging him,
Hmm.
uh, he can just be a missile.
Yeah. I've even found him a decent candidate for great fortitude because I'll slap that on him and be
Yeah.
like, okay, now,
Now
you know,
imperturbable's great.
exactly. Now go ahead, give it a shot. But he's actually harder to hit than the rest because he's on
Yeah.
one dodge and makes him a not attractive target. And I think the other great thing about him is that flying rune mark and then the
Hmm.
4 move actually has been pretty important.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that in a second, but you mentioned you were talking about warbands that you've been using before, like Gits, and saying, "Why don't I just do hold with these guys?" And I kind of landed on the same place as what I wanted to try out. And I've had some folks say, like, "Well, I don't get it. They don't have any built-in like movement tech. They don't have any built-in like can't be pushed sort of thing. Like, they're lacking a lot of those tools that would help." And what I've found is that when you play those in war, you can speak to this, Brian. Is that sometimes it doesn't matter if you have tech for getting on or for staying on if you can't stay alive.
Right.
Well, these guys have all the tech to stay alive, like built into their war scroll,
Right.
or a lot of it, I should say. And so that means you can open up some more room in your build to say, like, okay, I'm going to bring all the pushes I can find, and I am going to bring some movement tech. And hey, if I'm at a 1 on my cycle, well, I guess I'll just take a guard action.
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of it just kind of changes your economy a bit, but that factors in quite a bit there.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that was where I found value in that. I don't know
It,
if you had the
it
same.
Yeah, and additionally, the three of them, your leader, Strug with the pitchfork, and then Dripterius with the banner, are range 2. So they're good for castling onto a treasure token and swinging. Like say you get into position, they don't have the move tech, but once they're there, if you're able to keep them there and stay alive, they can continue to harass the opponent as they try and get you off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then adding like great strength onto this, even if you only have 1 damage on your cycle, swinging it up to 2 to 3 and then 4, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I think that's where we found a lot of that value. Since we're talking about like kind of those builds and such, I had the thought that we would just kind of make a quick pit stop at each rivals deck and say, what we thought was potentially valuable about that deck for this warband, or whether you'd consider it in your pairing or not, presuming you're building Nemesis,
Yeah.
and then go from there. So let's start with perhaps the simplest, Blazing Assault. Got any thoughts about that with these guys?
I mean, the power deck is great. I would say that their objective deck is not good. One of the games that I've played, my opponent was using Blazing Assault, and it's just aggro.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not. The warband wants to be on the objectives because of the cycle it advances if you're holding more. But so you want to do that, you're going to be on there, and then you're limiting their attack range because you're trying to stay on these things for the cycle. Granted, that's not getting you any glory, so you're incentivized to move off of it, and then you're not moving the cycle as fast, so you're not getting as many heals. And so there wasn't a synergy there in terms of, I already want to be on these objectives, and then I would score points or glory.
Yeah.
For being on the objectives. Instead, you're incentivized to get off of them, and then your cycle's not working. You're not healing as much. So the objective deck doesn't flow here at all, I think. The power deck is just powerful.
Yep.
So if you're bringing Blazing Assault, I would use it to augment power deck, not objectives. You might be able to take a couple,
Yeah. I
but
think
that would be like that might help in the matchup against another hold warband.
Yeah, I think there's a few like with so many range 2 attacks, something like keep chopping's pretty trivial often, because you're going to make those swings, and then again the range 2 helps you swing multiple times in a round, so that helps out with some of the ones that are looking for particular dice results like branching fate or perfect strike or critical effort. I think, which are many of which are stronger in other war bands, but they're totally serviceable here. But
Yeah,
yeah,
with branching fate, since it requires 3 dice or 2 if you're the underdog, I think you'd be relying on being the underdog. I think with Blazing Assault, you're going to be the underdog. You're not going to score as much glory as fast. But if you are, the thing to remember is you are not in control of your Inspire mechanic.
Right.
Unless you're self-wounding.
Which I don't think I've never found myself wanting or needing to do by and large.
Right. I'm never a big fan of self-wounding. Even when Dread Pageant could wound or heal themselves, it was always a trap to damage yourself. I don't
How
think
do you feel about them now where all their stuff is coming off of them being damaged?
I mean, I just wish they had a little bit more of the mechanics carried over, but
yeah.
So I don't think... So you're not... With the Gardeners, you're not in control of your own Inspires. So you only have 2 fighters at the start that have the 3 dice for Branching Fate, and then there's 2 more that can inspire to that, but you can't rely on your opponent giving you that. If your opponent wants to dissect you, they could. And that's
how many
something.
did you say you thought started with 3? I think there's only one. I think only Dripterus.
Stroog and no, you're right, Stroog. I was looking at Squirt's inspired side. Yeah, so you only have 1 for Branching Fate, so you have to essentially wait until you're the underdog, and then so Branching Fate still not great.
But I'm just saying, like, that might end up being like your 6th surge. But there are tons of other things that are real nifty in there. I mean, there's crazy plays like Scream of Anger so their Inspire, I should make note, I think it has to be after an action step. So Scream of Anger doesn't have a great interaction there.
Right.
Since it'll damage you during the
you'd have to
step. Yeah.
You'd have to use that in your opponent's
There's not really a surprise Inspire there, but point being, we all know there's like extra movement tricks with Illusory Fighter, Commanding Stride, Sidestep, distraction effects like Lure of Battle, all kinds of great options available from that power deck, including importantly, I think Great Fortitude, important for every warband, but this one really, really can leverage it. So you want your pairing to have Great Fortitude somewhere. And then all the stuff we're talking about, like Counterpunch, is a pretty important thing to have something to threaten that. And Blazing Assault's got options for that in spades. Next, I might actually let's throw out. Well, I don't know. I haven't tried them with Pillage and Plunder. So tell me about this. What found appealing there?
Yeah. So again, going into being on the objective on the feature tokens and being able to control your cycle, ramp it up, ramp it down. I thought Pillage and Plunder was perfect for that because you're going to get glory not necessarily for holding the objectives, but for just being on the feature tokens and then delving them. You don't love getting the stagger tokens, so there's an innate downside here, but being able to speed up or ramp up, ramp down, throttle the cycle based on hold more or hold less. Say you're on the final 2 spot and you want to ramp it up, so you're going to delve to move your cycle forward and get through the 3 spots. It can be 1 damage. Yeah. And then as you approach the 2 or get into the 2, then you can throttle it down so that you're going to spend more time doing 2 damage and potentially landing on the 3 damage. And that had some success. You just innately saw more glory because you were standing on the feature tokens and you're getting rewarded for Pillage and Plunder for doing that, rather than Blazing Assault telling you to get off them and attack your opponent. And then ramping up and ramping down, it's a mastery warband, so it wasn't. We were still quite new to all this and trying to understand it, and it wasn't exactly like, oh my god, here we are, it's flowing, but like we're like, okay, there's something to this. Right. There's a lot to work with here.
Sure.
And so I liked it. I'm curious. So I don't know if it'd be the A deck or the primary deck that I would build around, but it would definitely, I think it's a very viable B deck for this faction, for this warband.
I think that's fair. I mean, one of the things that most pulls me towards it is Prideful Duelist is another heal in there.
Yep.
If you make an attack in enemy territory, you can heal the attacker. And stacking the heals in this warband is pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
my
you did some super mastery stuff with this. I think when we last talked about it, was it Rack and Ruin that you tried?
I did try for my first one with them. I did the bad idea of pairing mastery with mastery. I don't really think that's a thing that folks should generally do. I
I think
think,
it'll be cool eventually. I think we'll see a combination that could work, but initially learning, like, I think you'd have to get a deck that really jives with what the warband's goals are.
yeah,
And
I
I don't
mean,
think we have enough variety there in the mastery pool.
I think that's possible, but if you think about that pairing of, the idea of like strike or take and hold, like those decks describe an actual like concerted play style, whereas the mastery tag like just denotes like, hey, this is complicated, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't say like uh you want to do generally this sort of thing. It says you want to do a complicated thing. And so pairing mastery with mastery is like you want to do a complicated thing with a complicated warband. So I think inherently you're less likely to find built-in synergy than you would with like, well, this is a strike warband. I'm going to give them blazing assault or reckless fury or whatever. I'm not saying it'll never work, but I'm saying like the concept slightly breaks down when you get to trying to connect mastery to mastery. In
Yeah.
my
Well,
uh,
and so like so far we have Rack and Ruin and Countdown to Cataclysm. Countdown to Cataclysm like primarily is saying like per the plot card, keep your opponent off of feature tokens, right? In
right,
order to advance your Cataclysm, the majority.
yeah,
Countdown to Cataclysm is essentially just like counter hold.
yeah,
You just want to keep your opponent off of the feature tokens. And so I think that pairs like goal wise in terms of mastery pairs goal wise with like a aggro deck. And
yeah. I mean,
then
some, but like if you're holding them, then they're not. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of in both, right? Like sometimes the best way to keep someone from holding it is to physically stand on it yourself.
right. But all that plot card's really saying is just keep them off. And I think like mastery is essentially saying not necessarily it is complicated, but it's
Yeah,
saying that you're bringing a new rule into the game, so it is complicating the game
yeah,
by adding another dimension to it. But
yeah,
what it's essentially saying with the plot is keep them off of the treasure token so that you can advance your cataclysm further. And how much benefit you get out of that is debatable, but I think what that's saying, is just can you pair a warband that wants to keep enemies off the feature tokens as well? Like it's just inherently counter hold.
yeah. But I guess what my point is though is that like mastery decks in general are not all like specifically as like, hey, maybe keep people off feature tokens, but your next mastery deck down the line, Rack and Ruin has nothing to do with that, right? So
Yeah.
Cataclysm saying keep them off the. So there's no play style that really attaches to mastery other than like, hey, it's got some like lateral step from the game to sort. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying in terms of pairing it with something that inherently wants to do that as well. And I don't think, well, grandfathers do want to do that. But I think Cataclysm isn't extremely cohesive in that goal. And that might have been the issue you were running into. But I think Cataclysm is much more of a made to be a B deck. Like it's the
yeah.
secondary deck that you're choosing.
Well, to be clear, I'm
and
not.
you were just running a Rivals, weren't you? Or
So
no?
I was on Rack and Ruin. We kind of spiraled a little way.
sorry.
I was on Rack and Ruin, and Rack and Ruin has like a pretty disjointed objective deck. Like
Yeah.
there's positioning stuff about between Alone in the Dark and not spread out, Stay Close, which are saying like I want people to be standing in particular spots, and then it's got some like card draw stuff, and ping things. So not only was my first game with the warband and my first game with this deck was the two paired together, and I was like, why did not go into this with a clear idea of like what my objective deck was asking me to do versus as I'm learning this. But that said, I think Rack and Ruin, even though, so it's what I've used for pairing, even though I don't dip into it very aggressively, I think there's a few things that you really like in there. I think you can use some of that self damage stuff, and I'm talking here about Fiery Temper, which is if you're about to get pushed, you can take 1 damage on your fighter. If you do, that fighter is not pushed. That will, you can prevent, not just, I mean, usually you think of it as drive back, like, oh, somebody's trying to drive me back, and you can, but it'll work against any distraction type effects. So lure of battle, for instance, you can say, no, I'm not going to, I'll take my 1 damage. I'll sit here. I'll probably heal it in a little bit. And Misfortune is the other one that does some self damage. Misfortune has this interaction. If it works as we think it probably does, immediately after this fighter uses a core ability, you can inflict 1 damage on this fighter. Then you remove this upgrade from this fighter, and you can remove this from and hand it to somebody else. That's less important. What you can do is you can, as part of a charge, the move part of the charge, inflict damage on yourself, bump yourself up to a higher damage than they were expecting, or some such. So there's that whatever you want to use from that self damage tech is handy. And then there's a few power cards. Emmett would say that you have to take this one because this deck has the confusion that has Grandfather's Gardeners printed on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta rep your warband with your own cards as much as you can.
Yeah, I found myself favoring certain versions of the same card because the art is more sticks in my brain a bit better than the other version, or your warband's featured on it.
It's important if it's reducing your mental load, go for
right.
it.
So with Wreck and Ruin, like, the objective deck isn't cohesive, like in the sense that it's not Blazing Assault straightforward or Emberstone Sentinel straightforward. But I think it is kind of that B deck, unless you're trying to just really inspire, but you don't get a massive amount of, you don't get any glory here for being just an inspired warband. So I don't think the self damage or necessarily pinging your opponent is going to net you a ton of glory, unless you want to bring Wreck and Ruin for the power deck supplementing damage.
I grabbed, I think I like Damned If You Do, because I'm either going to ping somebody or push somebody. Those are 2 really powerful effects. So I like that. And then as hard as it is to focus down one of your fighters, I thought Bloody and Bruised was actually a pretty decent surge for them. And this is scored immediately if you inflict damage on an enemy fighter, if 3 or more fighters are damaged. Yep. So that includes your own. And you can trigger it with a power card too.
Right.
So there's some good stuff there.
Again, Rack and Ruin, I think, is a really solid B deck choice for them.
Yeah. Well, and if you think the same about Countdown to Cataclysm, what would you reach for in Countdown?
Countdown, you're kind of just going for the... no, I'm getting confused here. What would I reach for out of Cataclysm?
Yeah, I mean, for example, for me, I mean, I think... especially if I'm holding anyway, then set explosives is real nice. Hold 2 or more tokens and all treasure in any territory.
Like Countdown, I take Countdown mainly as a supplement for hold, because it does have hold objectives in there, and so I've been playing it most with Emberstone Sentinels. So when you ask, that's why I got confused. I was like, what would I want Cataclysm for? It's like, well, hold, and most of those are synonymous with Emberstone in my mind. And not that I think Countdown is a really great tool set, in that the objective deck isn't cohesive, but you can take bits and pieces out of there. There's packs out of it. Just like I think you could pair it with an aggro deck if you wanted to go with a more aggro style for your warband. But essentially we're sticking with hold and stay on feature tokens, again, synergizing with their cycle mechanic.
Yeah. And I think Spread Havoc is often one that you can after just playing the game, at some point you're just going to score it while you could have fallen asleep at the table and you'll still score it.
Because it's a guaranteed one, or you can get two early if you really manage to keep your opponents off of the feature tokens.
Yeah. And then Wreckers is often pretty scoreable, depending on how you've managed your stuff. But in Countdown as well, there are some really tremendous. I mean, so it's got great fortitude if you haven't found that somewhere else.
Right.
And then a big one is utter conviction. Getting these guys on multiple defense dice really kind of complicates things for the opponent.
Yeah. You're not gonna see 4 save unless things go really, like, your opponent just completely neglects the feature tokens.
Yeah.
But that also means that you're losing a fighter each round.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think you just get yourself to 2, like even on 2 block, then
Right.
that's nifty, and then sometimes up to 3.
Yeah, and so by the third round, having that one tooled up fighter that's really tanky, having three block on him is going to be.
And I think this is one of the few warbands where I actually don't mind do or die. This is the one that does a temporary inspire, and you could even use it, to depending on circumstances. You could even use it specifically because it's going to uninspire a fighter if you just want to return them to, if they're kind of healed up and you want to return them to that I can't be one shot state. But it's a thing where you can be like, all right, well, I'm going to inspire, use my improved attack profile, and then I'll return to my to the loving embrace of imperturbable. So that's a lot of warbands. I'm like, it's not quite worth it to me, but this is one of the ones that I do kind of like. And then
a fun combo I just thought of is do or die on Squirt. Missile him into enemy territory onto a feature token, and then use something like Settle In to put him on guard. Because then when he uninspires, he just stays at 2 dodge. But then if you throw some guard token on him somehow, that'd be quite rude.
Yeah. And then this deck also has Violent Blast, which for any deck that is like trying to take over feature tokens.
This can be really crazy. I found it really, every time I set up my treasure tokens during the setup phase, I always regret not having one next to a stagger hex with this, because if you line it up correctly, it can be a confusion onto a feature token.
Oh, totally. Yep. So it's again, I think there's some excellent tools here as your B option. Let's talk quick about Reckless Fury. You got any thoughts about that as far as how it fills in here?
I mean, it's an extremely powerful aggro deck. I think they can utilize a lot of it. They will suffer a bit because it really rewards elite aggro. Everybody having charge tokens, having 5 fighters, you're not going to synergize with that until you start losing fighters.
Which you're kind of inherently not doing theoretically with your,
because you're so imperturbable. So it is not a bad deck pairing, but you're like really leaning into taking them a different direction than what their War Scroll necessarily wants.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think just having 5 fighters right out of the gate makes this much less attractive deck. It has a few things that, obviously, the crazy powerful utter ignorance. If you add that into the mix, it's just kind of rude with this warband. Saying like you have to swing even one more time, but that's just kind of true for just about every warband out there.
Anybody that touches utter ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. And then Blade Catcher is less, like, his turning off Grievous is less important with these guys, because Grievous is maybe struggling to even have an effect anyway. So
one block isn't great, and that's where I would be leaning more into increasing the damage, but then, or the defense. But then Grievous is really going to matter. Like, I think Grievous is going to be like, Keen Eye's great, adding an extra dice to your offense, but I think more and more we're going to see Grievous and Ensnare Cleave and Ensnare. I think we're going to see Cleave become really important as we see more 2-block fighters. I think Morgoth's Crush is exactly there.
I mean, I think it depends on the prevalence. Since we're mentioning a Blade Catcher in the mix, like in my build, I specifically was trying to decide if I wanted to bring cleave or if I wanted to bring +1 dice, and I settled on +1 dice because I could combo that with Grievous, and it wouldn't get at least the accuracy portion would not get shut off by
Yeah.
Blade Catcher. But
Yeah, and what I mean is that by investing in these guys' defense, if you have some way like utter conviction to get extra defense dice, having a backup of turning off cleave on top of that is going to be so powerful when your opponent's like, all right, well, you're 3 block. I'll just put cleave on here. And you're just like, Blade Catcher. And you're just like, like that is going to be the play like that. If you want to look at counter tech, that'll be great.
Yeah. I did at the end of all things, I've kind of, this with Blazing Assault were some of my last places I was looking for cards. In this pairing, just because they can't leverage it quite as well. That just kind of leaves the one we've been dancing around because I think we're both on board with it, is Emberstone Sentinels.
It's my favorite.
It has surprisingly good. Well, for one, it's got Healing Potion, which is an important pickup.
Yep.
And then Confusion. Again, if you haven't picked it up from Rack and Ruin, pretty important for this. You sometimes don't have the accuracy, and you certainly don't regularly have the dice to be able to trigger an overrun to get somebody off. So it's a good way for swapping in there. But there's some movement tech, and there's actually great counterpunch stuff. And then survivability things. Well, so like the upgrades really is a smorgasbord of deliciousness for.
Well, you mentioned Healing Potion, but you also have Settle In to give a guard token. Yep, totally. But most importantly, I think in the upgrades, you also have Sharp Reflexes, +1 save. Money. Yep. And then you have Agile for a defensive reroll. So spread the love or stack it on the same guy. Fantastic. But most importantly, also, there's so much here. You also have Duelist in order to push onto feature tokens.
Yeah.
You also have great Fortitude in here. You also have great Strength and Keen Eye. This upgrade deck, the biggest problem with it is it gets expansive because you're talking a lot of 2 glory upgrades here.
Yeah, I found in a number of my games, I was not putting any upgrades on until the end phase of the first round because I just can't afford everything in my hand or anything in my hand, much less. So
you can afford it if you bring Supremacy. Supremacy is so good. Yeah. It's like, even though you have 5 fighters, you only need 2 alive in order to score this. You got to have the right 2, but I believe the Warband, just about any combination of the 2 can score it. You just want to you want to avoid. You got to keep Strug and Phlegmus alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Showing
one of anybody else. So
showing the soft underbelly of the Warband. If you're playing against this, if you're playing against Gardeners, Phlegmus and Strug would be the ones to target to make Supremacy less viable. And that's all the help I'm giving you now.
Yeah. And then even then, once you've got Supremacy knocked out, then you're not too worried about losing one of them. Other than the fact that giving up 2 bounty is a bummer. But really, like, for the other guys, as hard as they can be to remove, like, somebody finally gets to the end of killing one, and they're like, I get 1 bounty off this guy? Like, come on. Like, yeah. So I'll use that often to inform my heals. Is like, well, sorry, Slunge. I think you're going to be the guy who, I got to lose somebody here.
Yeah.
And I guess
Slunge, because he stays at 1 range, is my most expendable fighter. Squirt being my second most expendable, but that's only because of his range 1, but he's still a great missile. If there's any way I can manage to inspire him, then I would hold him in reserve, but odds are I'm not packing self-damage. So I'm just going to chuck them. And the more attacks I waste into them, the better.
Laying out the fighters that you're going to make vulnerable, or not make vulnerable, but like kind of present as the easier targets.
Yeah, your front rank.
Yeah, your front rank. And you talked about, so I'll end up taking some damage on that front rank because 1 block is fine. They definitely get missed, but sometimes you'll rack up some damage. And you talked about spreading out your cards like Sharp Reflexes or Agile, or stacking them. And I found often I'm stacking them because somebody will have taken a couple hits and like another hit will drop them and everyone else is going to take multiples. So you end up being like, hey, you can go after this guy who's 2 defense dice on guard with a reroll, and it's only one more hit to kill him, or you can go after one of these guys, which is by definition 2 hits to kill them.
Right.
And then whichever way they go, you start healing up the one that needs it the most. So
yeah, spread the love and inspire me, please.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Emberstone, we talked about supremacy, Iron Grasp. I've been including slow advance. I thought it'd be harder, but with the things that you were talking about, like Duelist, and some other speed cards or push cards, been able to even hold stuff in enemy territory. So Emberstone Sentinel's been real solid for me, but I think there's definitely a build. Like I'd like to try a Blazing Pillage and Plunder build and just see what goes there, what comes of that, or Pillage and Plunder plus Rack and Ruin to maintain some of that. Like there's a lot of other combos that I haven't had the opportunity to try that I think might be worth investigating for sure.
Yeah, pillage and burn, like that's a real scorched earth wasteland policy.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be fun. Like I said, I think there is room for that, like aggro wise. But I think you're then far more interested, more concerned with your cycle and landing where you want the 2 damage or the 3 damage. So you're going to pack in as much like great strength, glory seeker in order to control that more. Going into your action, you're going to equip that just so that it's like, well, I didn't quite land where I wanted to be on the cycle, so here. So my personal recommendation for the Gardener's deck build is to start off with Emberstone Sentinels as your A deck. There's the 3 solid end phases that are going to give you that solid glory in order to pay for the fantastic upgrades that you want down here. They're defensive and they have healing potion. There's so much. There's healing, there's defense, there's offense, and there's objective control like confusion and guard tech. I think it's just cash money here.
Yeah.
It's Rack and Ruin may have released with them, but I think Emberstone Sentinels is what they're destined for. And then you can pair it with whatever you want, whatever you feel your playstyle wants to supplement with. For me, I just keep doubling down on a good thing, and I'm dabbling with pairing the B deck with Pillage and Plunder. I'm probably going to master myself here with delving too much.
I like that as a phrase. I mastered myself. Sorry.
Right. I'm probably going to delve too much and then realize I didn't score anything. But the deck that I have in front of me that I was dabbling with, I think it's workable. The total glory is like 18, but I think that's it's workable as long as you leave Strip the Realm at home. And that pains me to say because I hate leaving powerful glory end phases on the table, and that's 3 glory in the end phase, but you got to have like
you have 18 glory in this deck, you're fine.
Yeah, but I'm greedy. Especially when you have an end phase. Like I have a single glory end phase in here with where'd you go? Yeah, against the odds instead of Strip the Realm for 3. So as a hold objective aficionado, that pains me. But I think Strip the Realm will have combinations where like you're going to have Strip the Realm and Supremacy in hand, and then you're just like, so I'm leaving that one at home, and I think it's doable because then
you can Strip the Realm and Supremacy. You just hold the ones that you don't let make sure your opponent's not on any of the other ones. You're fine. You're good.
But again, I think you're just going to master yourself, and sure. You're going to be sitting there in consternation because that is my MO. Just standing there going like, can you not be where you are? Because it's impossible for me to do this right now. Like you could have it both ways, but your opponent's not going to let you. Yeah. Especially when you have 2 end phases like that. As soon as your opponent knows, oh, he's Emberstone Sentinels and Pillage and Plunder. Is he a greedy? Yes, I am. So I'm not. I'm going to reduce the chances that I get disappointed, and I'm going to leave glory at home so that I can score more glory at the table consistently.
Sure. Makes sense.
But that sacrifice there is, I think, made up for in the power deck, because again, Pillage and Plunder, I think, is doubling down on a good thing. What you already have in Emberstone Sentinels, you get even more of, and it's different in Pillage and Plunder. So you're not like having Great Fortitude. Instead, you have like Great Strength and Glory Seeker if you want to really lean into damage. But there's more defense tech, more hold tech, and you also have by the numbers in Emberstone Sentinel, so you can draw more. With the chances of drawing an extra power card at the beginning of each round for losing the roll off, I think you can easily do a 22 power card deck here, plus by the numbers. I get to the bottom of this deck pretty consistently to the point where I'm like, do I do 24 or 22?
No. No.
Math. 20 and 22, and then do I do 24?
I stick with a hard
maybe 23. Maybe 23. Yeah. Like if you bring great speed, but you really got to be careful about a upgrade deck that's too expensive.
Yeah. That if anything, that's what I may have done to myself with the deck I built. I did a Emberstone Rack and Ruin pairing. Ended up with a glorious 17, and 9 of the objectives are coming from Emberstone Sentinels. Half the gambits, so that's split evenly, and then like 8 of the upgrades are coming from Emberstone Sentinels as well. But what Rack and Ruin provides is some pretty nice stuff in there. I didn't mention Fireproof. I've got that in there. That's the first time damage is inflicted on a friendly fighter in the next turn, reduce that damage to 1. That pairs nicely with Squirt. You're like, okay, well, I just grabbed that objective in your territory. You can try and knock me off it, but you're going to inspire Squirt. You know, like it's just one more layer on the, hey, we just don't have enough activations to
messing with their kill math.
Yeah, exactly. I jammed Sidle Up in there. In retrospect, I might swap this one out for Hold the Line, but Sidle Up is the pick a friendly fighter, push up to 2 hexes. That push must end adjacent to 2 or more fighters. That is a card that I've had to like definitely engineer positioning to make it happen. And so I'm doing all this like fiddling around, like, okay, if I could stand this guy here and this guy here, and he drives back, then I can still pull this off. Like, man, this is a lot of work for a push, but the more pushes, the better often. So. It's good. I think we'll include both these decks in the show notes here, so people can take a gander at them, try them out if they want.
Don't use that one. I'm posting a new one that I've actually pared down. I so spoiled for choice that I had like 13 and 12.
I opened it up and I was like, and Brian's like, I think this one works. I'm like, well, the validation rules on this say it doesn't. So let me go.
I know. I was still trimming or gardening, curating my garden. Pruning. There it is.
Yeah. It's card topiary is that word for you. So we'll include both these. Before we wrap, are there what do you have any like thoughts or observations on like how you're putting the board down versus where you're putting objectives? Not objectives, treasure tokens. Yeah, you want to even go back and figure out how many times we call them objectives in this one. Treasure tokens.
Main thing for me is going to be putting them close by. They're only 3 move with the gardeners, so I want to keep them quite consolidated. Depending on your objective deck, like for me, Emberstone Sentinels, I want to be on nomads and enemy territory quite often. And like I want to have, one in friendly territory, but I'm not trying to hoard them because it's not going to score me in my end phases. So I want to just keep them clustered. I want to make it so that my range 2 can swing on anybody that's trying to mess with another guy nearby. Ideally, if they're able to overlap, that way they're kind of swinging and protecting each other. But mainly just being able to reach them.
I think to that effect, I feel like a lot of the games I've played so far, I've kind of lost the setup roll off.
Yeah.
which is a conversation for another time. I think right now that first roll off really more than it should heavily penalizes the loser. They end up on that kind of uh, bad end of the stick on a number of things. But
or next episode, we teach everybody how to roll better on this roll off.
But I found it to be pretty adaptive. The pairing I've got, because I've got Iron Grip, which is the Iron Iron Grip.
Yeah, Iron Grasp.
Iron Grasp, where I'm trying to like holding everything in one territory helps. So if the enemy tries to load my territory up to make Iron Grasp harder, then they've made Supremacy easier, and I've got a couple of the like hold 1 or 2, hold 3 or 4, and if they're focusing on that, then I can usually sneak a treasure token in that's not too far over the line. And in a desperate spot, I'll put one that's like a move 3 away from one of mine for a Plague Bear, and then one that's move 4 away on the other side of the board, so I have the chance to like sneak Squirt across and have him grab one. I've even been willing to like make 2 move actions to do it. Just like, it's fine. Like I'm at a 1 on my damage thing anyway. It's not like this attack is. It's neither accurate nor highly damaging right now. We'll get to that. We'll get to that damage stuff later.
Yeah.
So those have been the considerations in general with those, and that's been kind of cool to see. And some of it is also like, we saw really high level play at Worlds, but a lot of people are still playing their 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th, 15th game of 2nd edition. So people are still learning like what's this is the pairing I'm seeing. Okay, what am I supposed to be counterplaying?
Right.
It's been fun to have that kind of like slowly coming back into the mix.
One of the things I initially was very apprehensive. I didn't like that all of the objective decks were capped at 16 glory. I was like, man, that like it felt like there was a lot less room for expression or like big scores. But actually, like it, as we've talked about each of the decks, it's like, it keeps all of them within the realm of possibility. Like, I'm going to bring Emberstone Sentinels and Blazing Assault. You're like, why? But it doesn't lower the glory ceiling all that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but that few glory here or there can all of a sudden is a big difference. We mentioned it on the stream at Worlds, but folks were talking there about how when the decks are so close together in glory, even Nemesis decks are frequently, at the outside 3 or 4 away from each other. And that's if somebody took a greedy one versus a lean one. There's severe outliers one way or the other, but
and that's where knowing your opponent's deck, knowing the counterable cards, and counterplay is going to be just as big as scoring your own deck. Or it's going to be the real master level is countering your opponent's deck and scoring, which is why I'm leaving Strip the Realm at home.
That one bit of denial can definitely make a big difference. As opposed to, sometimes in 1st edition, if you just had a super greedy deck, you're like, it's all right. If I didn't score this 2 glory one, I've got 22 other glory, loaded up, or if you're super greedy. But yeah. Any other thoughts? What any matchups you found particularly challenging, or one way or the other?
I'm sure. Well, anytime somebody's going to be throwing 4 to 5 offense dice against you, they're just going to start mulching the gardeners. So you're going to target that fighter. Anybody like keeping an eye out for the enemy fighter that can get up to that many. They probably also have keen eye, and stacking it on the same guy is just going to be rude. Your defense is just not going to be able to hold up to that sustained accuracy. So I would fear that fighter, kill that fighter. Anybody with cleave, that'll be big, I think. So I don't quite yet have like as much as we are trying to play each of these warbands, we also don't have enough time to then try against other warbands. So still quite vague here, but
sure.
I think that's
Well,
fair.
I've initially found some challenges with if the opponent is rocking something that is also trying to get on feature tokens and has the special tech to do it quickly. So
Yeah,
even just against Jaws Witzel, Phil used the I can't remember, it's instinctive, whatever gets the pile of snakes to get to move for free
yeah,
with an attack. So he like used that to jump out and jump on a feature with the snakes that I kind of wanted. I was like, ugh, now this 2 dodge fighter is sitting, and I like my
yeah,
most accurate attack is 2 hammers.
yeah.
This is not. I don't have a great way of getting them off of this, and so those make for some interesting entanglements as far as decision making.
Also,
Um,
like overrun is going to be really annoying to deal with.
mhm.
Being overrun, and I'm not yet sure how much to value those upgrades that prevent overrun, or say like this fighter can't be driven back.
Yeah, the not being driven back, like I think brute momentum is a Emberstone Sentinels one,
Because that would
which
prevent overrun too.
right, if you cannot be driven back, so brute momentum, for example, cannot be driven back while they have any charge tokens. So use your range to charge it on to somewhere, and now overrun says that like, hey, you can push into the spot that they used to be, but if they weren't driven back in the first place, then you can't do that. So um, rather than I think there's maybe one card that says this fighter can't have overrun triggered on him or something like that.
Right,
I prefer like lean into the guard options and can't
right.
be driven back options.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like Cleave, I think the stocks are just going to continue to go up on Cleave,
Mm,
as it's going to be one of the most accuracy increasing abilities. I think even more so than +1 dice. But it depends. If you're going from 2 to 3 dice, then that's better. Um, Maybe I'm dead wrong on there statistically. Who knows?
I mean,
But
it also depends on your targets, right? Like if they're defending on blocks or if they're on
yeah,
guard, big deal. If they're not, then
yeah. I just
irrelevant.
don't know how to evaluate
It's tough.
overrun.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So it's very different problems. And I think another one that had potential for being challenging is someone like the Ember Watch who can pop that 1 damage first. Like they shoot you with their bow and then they come charging in with a follow up 2 damage. You know, like, well,
Yeah,
that can actually kill me, and that's a problem for me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um,
They were the ones I had in mind when they were chucking 5 dice. The ranger fighter for them, she can get up to 5 dice. And I was like, man, Kira's still scary.
yeah. RIP. Um, yeah, that was that's like Gerard was using Ember Watch when I played, and
Mm,
he did manage to stack some heavy accuracy in there, and I was doing the thing of walking the vulnerable people, or not literally vulnerable, walking the endangered fighters just away onto other feature tokens that were less dangerous to be on,
yeah,
or piling my heals into one guy and my defensive tech into another guy, just making like here's all bad options.
yeah.
It was a it was fun. Like it's very different problems to solve depending on what you're playing against, and so I've really enjoyed uh, circling full all the way back to the start of the episode. Despite it feeling like, hey, there won't be all that many decisions to make, I've really enjoyed uh, the tactical choices with the warband so far. It's been super fun. Really, really had a lot of fun with this warband, and we haven't been able to go out. Em and I haven't been able to go out to the league nights because I my work cycle is such that I will start to work a bunch of Thursdays in a row. But
Mm-hmm.
following the winter break, we'll be back out for a few. So I'm really looking forward to playing some folks I haven't played with them yet, and bringing the blooms to more people, spreading Nurgle's garden even further.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably be trying them out some more.
All
I
right.
I always struggle with I want to return to my old favorites. Gits are still good. I
Mm-hmm.
really like
Yeah,
Gits,
they are.
but I've been there, done that. I need to paint some new figures. I've been off the hobby horse for so long now. I'm just really beating myself up about it. Need to put paint on figures again.
Right.
And I don't know. Nurgle is one where like there you can fix it in post. So uh, this might be This might be my main for a bit. We'll see.
Okay. Well, you got any more thoughts here before we wrap up?
Ticks.
Ticks, yeah. Yeah.
Nurgle's gushers.
This is one of those warbands that like I think I'm excited to paint, and probably once I start, I'll be like,
why was I excited?
Yeah, hopefully we get some drier weather here and I can get a quick prime on and just try some stuff out with them. This feels like a fun project to work on.
Yeah, it's been pretty moist out here.
Yeah. We are going to wrap it there. If you want to get in touch with us, our Discord is a great way to do so. But you can also give us an email at whatthehexcast@gmail.com. You can check out all our content at themortalrealms.com. Over on the Mortal Realms, aka the story phase, I think there'll be a recording episode of Sigmarnalia. I think once we included that in our stream here, just kind of duplicated it over. We'll see that you may or may not see that on our feed. If not, it's going to be over there, and that's where all the different podcasts on the network or whoever can make it gathers in. It's not yet recorded, and judging how long it takes to edit those, sometimes it may be a little while. But are you? I think you were going to be in on that one, maybe.
Yeah, I plan to.
Yeah,
I wasn't there for last year, so
I don't think we had any What the Heck's there last year. So
shame on us.
We were busy.
Yeah, we're busy doing our own thing.
I think we literally put out more episodes than the other 3 shows on the network combined.
Flex.
Yeah, exactly. We've done a lot, and so it'd be good for us to just get on there and have a chance to.
And they'll edit it, right?
Our big year. What's that? Oh yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah,
yeah. That's all on Aaron. If he wants it, he'll make it happen. But one thing that we always make happen here is the Flavatext quiz. Are you ready, Brian?
I've been on a streak, so let's go for it.
So I kind of did a little looking around. I was looking for ones that maybe feature the gardeners on them. There's not a ton of those, and some of those were not like super relevant, or also maybe not. They were like fairly vague flavor text. I was like, I don't know if anyone would get this. So I'm going with one. You'll figure out the theme here, but it is attributed not to one of the gardeners, who I don't know if we've seen a quote from them. I'd be interested to see when they.
Yeah. Curious what they'd have to say.
This one's attributed to Gulgach the Butcher. Our grandfather's first lesson is how to endure pain. Hold still, my lad, and let me give ye an education.
Gulgach is on it.
Yeah. Well,
did you mention this card?
Gulgach is on it. Not
I'm pretty sure you talked about it.
I did.
Yeah, I can picture it. It's got his gut on it with his the axe.
It's a scourge from Rack and Ruin.
Yep. Do 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 do.
The listeners can hear you clicking through Underworld's DB to find
it. Bloody and Bruised.
Oh, you got there. All right. Yep. Yes, Bloody and Bruised. So one of them included. And your recommended listening, we're going to return to, I think, black metal for this. This is Grima, and it's Rotting Garden is the track.
Perfect.
Exactly. For What the Hex, I've been Davy.
I've been Brian.
Awesome. Oh man, and I totally forgot. I was gonna talk about, this is random, but not spread out. I always want to say spread out. It's stay close, which I like that those two objectives are right next to each other in the deck. Mm-hmm. Spread out and stay close. But
cute.
Stay close is the one that says no fighters can be in an edge hex. And it has this interesting thing where like the counterplay to it is to obviously put somebody in edge hex, but by definition, in the edge hexes, there are no feature tokens. So
Mm-hmm.
you're like, hey, you can counterplay this, but if you do, that's one less person that can like occupy one of the feature tokens that I want. So
yeah,
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and you get a lot of control here. Well, maybe not talk about that. That was a world's ruling. Editor, please cut this.
Okay.
For me, with Pillage and Plunder, having Violent Blast is, just make sure I got that one. I always Sudden Blast. There we are. Nope.
No, the Cataclysm is the one with the stagger token.
Okay, well, editor, please save me from embarrassment. Or are you editing this?
I probably am, yeah.
All right, hi bloopers. Okay, scratch that.